Hello, welcome to Scrap Time, episode 703. My name is Christina, and on today's episode, I'm showing you the Luminarte H2Os by Creative Imaginations. Today I'm showing you the Holiday Sparkle collection of the Luminarte H2Os by Creative Imaginations. We have Twilight, which is the darker blue, Ice, Emerald, Vavoom Red, Moonbeams, and Sugar Plum. And a lot of times with these H2Os, we're coloring in an image, but this time we're going to use them to make a background image. So I have this card here to show you the sort of idea of how we've just sort of put the colors all over the background and then just stamped on top. So we're going to start by showing, I'm going to start by showing you how to do the all over look. I've already sprayed my H2Os with water to get them moist. This purple one looks a little, could use a bit more. But that's the first thing you want to do, is to soften up your H2Os and spray them with water. Move it aside. I'm just going to... So for this technique, I find it works best on a watercolor paper. And what you want to do is you want to spray your paper as well. Get it nice and wet. I've got a little hair on my paper there. So then I come in and I take a color. It's still a little sticky. I want them nice and wet. Pick up some color from my spray, and you'll see when I put it onto my paper how it feathers out in the water, and that's what we want. And here you can see the brush marks. I can just take a little water and spritz it. So I'm just going to wipe my brush there on a paper towel, and then I'll go in for another color. Here I've got some green. So the paper, especially under these lights, will, if it's not doing that, it could be that your palette here isn't wet enough. I'm getting too much pigment, or your paper isn't. But that's okay too. You go like that, you spray some water on it, and eventually all the color will blend together. Now I'm going to take some of this here. So you can see by the amount of water I'm using why it's important to do it on a watercolor paper. If this was a normal paper by now, it wouldn't be very happy. And then I can just spritz it and blend them. Spritz and blend, spritz and blend. Wiping it off just on the paper towel. Let's get some of this. And all you can see here, it's falling down the sides. That's fine. You just wipe that up later. Color and I use Moonbeam. And every time you do this, you're going to get a different look, obviously. That's sort of neat like that. I'm just going to give it a final spritz. And I'm going to bring in a paper towel to clean that off. At this point too, I can wipe off some of this excess at the ends. Now I'm going to bring in my heat gun and dry it. You may have noticed as it was drying it went up, and then as I was finally taking all the water out it flattened out. But now you see it's done this little arc like that. So I'm going to show you the trick I tried to show you the other day, and hopefully it works this time. By turning it over and blow drying it, it should flatten it out. So it did flatten it a little. And just rotate it like that and it's pretty flat. So that background is done. But I'm going to show you one more background before we do our stamping. I have this card here, and instead of doing a big splotchy thing, I did just strips of color, little stripes back and forth. So I'm going to show you how to do that one. Sometimes when I'm just working here at the table to clean my brush, what I do is I put some water on the table and I rub my brush in it and I wipe it on my paper towel. I think I still have quite a bit of color in there. I know I could easily just, go get some water, but why would I want to do that when I can just rub it on my table? So anyway, so for this one, I am going to use, I think, the red and the white. I'm going to put a little bit more. I want them sort of liquidy. And what I did was I took the red, which isn't very liquidy, and I just randomly did stripes. Like that. Then I took my ice, the white one. I'm blending a bit of the color right now, but it's okay. I can always take it out later. And I'm going to go over that to get that nice sparkle in there. And then at this point I can spray my paper. And you see how the color just starts to bleed, and that's how you can smooth it out across your paper. If you want a little bit more of the red, add a bit more red in. If you want more of the ice, add some ice in. And then we can just dry that and it'll be ready to be stamped on. So it's really quick to do these little backgrounds. So I'm just going to get it dried up and then continue on to our stamping. So I dried off this background and I'm going to use this one to show you the stamping. And I just want to remind you that whenever you use your H2Os, make sure they completely dry before putting the lid on, because sometimes if the paint is around where the lid goes, it can really stick it and get it hard to take off. So make sure they dry and then put your lids on them and put them away. So for this card, I'm going to be using this stamp set. It was from last year. It's the Merry Christmas Trees set. And I'm going to be using the 3 trees. And we're going to do a little masking technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my big tree on my block. And I am using archival ink, even though it is dry now. This ink is a waterproof ink. So if you were to do this before it was completely dry, you wouldn't have to worry about your ink bleeding. And I'm going to put this in and around the middle. make sure it all gets stamped there. And what I have done is I have stamped this image onto a piece of paper to use as a mask, and I cut it out and it will sit there. Now sometimes you can use post-it notes, and so that way the adhesive from the post-it note will hold it on. However, I didn't have a post-it note long enough for my tree, but because I'm not doing much, I'm just putting it there and it should stay. And now I'm taking my next tree, putting it on a block and inking it up. So I want to make sure my mask is covering my tree. And then I'm going to take this stamp and stamp over top. And you can see how my mask masked it, so it looks like this tree is in front. It didn't overlap there. That is the look I am going for. I'm going to take my last tree. That'll go back on. And again, you can see how there's the overlap there of the trees. So that is how you do a masking technique. Now there's a few little snowflakes in this set, or stars and snowflakes or whatever. So I'm going to just randomly stamp them in the background a bit. I like to stamp them off a bit, just makes it, I don't know. There, that's good enough for that. And now I can put these back on and get myself a greeting. So I'm going to use the one that says Season Greetings. Place it on my block. Ink it up. Hopefully I left myself enough room. Let's just double check. It's going to be tight. Maybe what I'll do for this one is I will use Merry Christmas. Let's see if that will... That might fit a bit better. So for this one I will use Merry Christmas. So that's one thing, if you're putting a greeting, you might want to leave enough space for your greeting, is always handy. So this is a long greeting, but it should fit here. It's going to overlap my trunk a little. I'm okay with that. There we have Merry Christmas. And then you can just mat this onto a piece of the black cardstock or whatever you'd like. Here's a few. You can see that's variations of the same design. So there we have, using our H2Os, and we've done some masking technique with our stamping. Well, that's it for today's episode. Be sure to check out my website at www.scraptime.ca. And on our next episode, we're doing some paper piecing using stamps from Lawn Fawn Stamps. So please join us. Thanks for watching Scrap Time.